Makes him the Rambo of the insect world, and nobody wants to tangle with a bombardier beetle. But if God could do that with a 1-inch beetle that's indigenous to the temperate climate zones around the world, and in fact is found down here around San Diego, so don't go walking around barefoot or you'll find out the hard way they're around here, what could he do with a 20 or 30-ton Leviathan? He made the fire-breathing dragon. Now, in this excellent book, The Real History of Dinosaurs, Dr. Mace Baker, creationist dinosaur specialist, he points out that the Hebrew words tanin and tanim in the Hebrew should be translated by the modern word dinosaur. He makes a strong hermeneutical and linguistic argument for that. He also quotes ancient scholars who describe what dragons look like in their day, and their description sounds like known types of dinosaurs. So I would agree with Dr. Henry Morris, who said if one will simply translate tanim by dinosaur, every one of the more than 25 uses of the word becomes perfectly clear and appropriate. Dinosaurs are in the Bible, but they're there by the ancient word, not the modern word that was invented after the Bible was written. Now, if man and dinosaurs survived the flood, we might expect to find artistic depictions of dinosaurs in archaeology. And indeed we do. Man is by nature artistic. This ancient cave painting from Zimbabwe shows what appears to be a Tenontosaurus type of sauropod dinosaur. The evolutionists said it's some strange mystical creature. When you ask any kid, what does that look like? And they say, it's a dinosaur. See, kids are often smarter than our scientists. So that was in Africa. Here in North America, Havasupai Canyon near Grand Canyon, ancient Indian petroglyph, outlined in white to make it clear. But it is the profile of a dinosaurian creature, very similar to the known dinosaur Edmontosaurus. Here we have an ancient Roman mosaic from the 2nd century A.D. showing 2 long-necked dragons fighting or playing on the banks of the Mediterranean Sea. When we look at the foot structure, the joint structure of the leg, the layout of the body, the length of the neck, it is an uncanny, very accurate depiction of a known type of ceropsid reptile known as a Tanystropheus. How in the world did they know that? Were they just lucky in their guessing? Or maybe the Historia Animalium is true, that dragons were real. They existed up to the end of the 1500s in Europe. And that history agrees with biblical history. Now, on the left here, we have Dr. Don Patton. Dr. Patton is a creationist geologist from Dallas. He heard about this ancient Indian petroglyph in Colorado, just across from the Utah border. He went to photograph it. He noticed the local people call this the Triceratops petroglyph because it has 3 horns. Triceratops in the Greek means 3-horned face. Armored plate behind its neck, a Triceratopian-type mouth. And no wonder they say it looks like a Triceratops. The evolutionists said, no, the ancient Native Americans never saw a Triceratops. Why, they were just trying to draw a goat, you know. It's just a goat. But if you look above it, you'll see the ancient Native Americans jolly well know what a goat looks like. So I think it's a Triceratops. Just a few years ago at Natural Bridges National Monument in Utah, we finally located a petroglyph first located by the evolutionists, but they despised creationists, so they wouldn't tell us where it was. We had to find it on our own. It's outlined in white to make it clear that it is definitely the depiction of a sauropod-type reptile like an Apatosaurus. Now, here we have the actual photo. It's a little bit faint, but you can see there's the eye and the mouth, there's the neck, there's the legs up here, tip of the tail here, and he's next to an Anasazi Indian warrior in their kind of stylized depiction of themselves. We know this is not modern graffiti because it's thickly covered with this reddish chemical compound called desert varnish, and this takes centuries to slowly build up on the surface of desert rocks. When it's this thick, it easily dates back more than 1,000 years. To a time when the climate was better, and the Anasazi culture, as well as apparently some dinosaurs, were still thriving in what is today a very austere desert area. Now, the Nazca Indian culture of South America is distinguished by having dinosaur motifs found often in their tapestry and their pottery recovered from their ancient tombs. Now, a reptile is a dinosaur not because of size, but because of anatomy. Technically, if we found a reptile no bigger than a mouse that had dinosaur anatomy, we would have to call that a dinosaur. It's not a size issue. The movie Godzilla said size matters. Well, it does with Godzilla. It doesn't matter with dinosaurs. You can be small. Some dinosaurs were no bigger than chickens. We know that. Now, this reptilian creature has legs directly supporting its body like a horse or a cow. That's dinosaurian anatomy, not crocodilian. It has a long articulated neck structure. Definitely dinosaurian, not crocodilian. And it gets almost infinitely better than that. Centuries ago, during the days of the Spanish conquistadors in South America, the Spanish occupying the ancient Inca Empire kept a history of the Incas called the Chronicle of the Incas. In there, they have a passage where they mention the Incas were fond of etching stones with pictures on them, rounded river stones, and then burying the etched stones ritualistically in their tombs. They said most of the pictures were understandable, but some of them were of strange, monstrous, reptilian, dragon-like creatures that the Spanish were not familiar with. And they even sent some of those stones back to Spain for analysis by the scholars in Spain. We're hoping, if we can get permits, to go through some of the ancient Spanish archives, if it hasn't been destroyed or thrown out over the centuries, we might find those original stones. But it was graphically illustrated, graphically described by the Spanish centuries ago, centuries before the middle of the 19th century, when dinosaurs were rediscovered as fossils. Now that's interesting, because we would predict, if the Spanish are correct, that when we find and excavate Inca tombs, we would find these etched stones. And indeed we have found them, literally by the tens of thousands. And between 20 to 30% of them, on the average, have images on them that look like this. Gee, I wonder what those strange mystical creatures could be. Well, they're unambiguous depictions of known types of dinosaurs. So unambiguous that the evolutionist knee-jerk reaction was, well, it's a big fraud. Somebody's done a fraud here. Those ancient Incas could have known what dinosaurs looked like. According to the Bible, they could have, because they survived the flood. And they perhaps only recently disappeared and went extinct. Well, you've got to think about this. If it's a fraud, you've got to have a motive, you know. If you're going to do a fraud, rule of thumb is you make one or two only. You don't make them by the thousands to devalue them and then stick them in Inca tombs that are hard to find. You know, how do you cash in on a fraud like that? Who would go through all that time and effort, and what are they getting out of it? What's the motive? And how in the world did the Spanish accurately report it centuries before dinosaurs were rediscovered in the fossil record? Doesn't really sound like a fraud. Well, they have these on display in the city of Ica, Peru, at the Cabrera Museum. In fact, the History Channel went down there, and they showed on an episode called UFOs in History. They showed a stone like this in the Cabrera Museum. And in the corner, it had what looked to me, on the stone they were looking at, it was covered with dinosaurs like this, the one they were looking at. But in the corner, it had what looked to me like a broad-rimmed hat. That's what I thought it was. They said, oh my goodness, here it is, spitting image of a flying saucer. Ancient Incas, 15 centuries ago, saw flying saucers. Now, they did not say one word about the rest of the stone that was covered with dinosaurs. I thought, what in the world, you know, remind me of the scene out of The Wizard of Oz, you know, where the wizard is behind the curtain running his machine, putting on his show, and then Toto comes and pulls the curtain back, and they can see, what's going on. So he pulls the curtain in front of them and he yells into the microphone, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain, just look where you're supposed to look and nowhere else. And that's what I felt like. You know, look at this little thing that looks like a UFO, forget all the dinosaurs. Well, if you ever get down to Peru, you can go to the museum founded by Dr. Javier Cabrera. Dr. Cabrera was an MD, founder of the largest teaching medical hospital in the country of Peru, and a qualified archaeologist and anthropologist. He did massive excavations back when it was legal. If you found an Inca tomb, it used to be legal that you got to excavate it and keep all the artifacts. And he has the largest collection of these type of pre-Columbian artifacts in any type of private museum in the world. He recently passed away, but his family is still running the museum. It's still open to the public if you ever get down to Peru. Now, Dr. Cabrera, very respected academic down there, he was not a creationist. He was an evolutionist. Yet he said his archaeological findings forced him to concede Darwin was wrong about one thing. He was wrong in assuming dinosaurs went extinct millions of years ago. He believed everything else about Darwin, but he said that part has got to be false, because the ancient Incas obviously were intimately acquainted with known types of dinosaurs. Now, in his collection, he has many of these, thousands of these Inca burial stones, and many of them do show men and dinosaurs rather intimately acquainted. For example, here, we have an ancient Inca riding elephant style on a creature with 3 horns, an armored plate, and 4 legs. Well, we all know what that is. It's a triceratopian dinosaur. Now, it also shows us smoking went back quite a few centuries. But according to the Bible, who were the first non-smokers in history? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Didn't even have the smell of smoke on them. What's really fascinating here is that this artifact, recovered from a tomb 15 centuries old, has got these dermal frills on the back of dinosaurs. We did not know they had that anatomical feature until the 1990s. They're made out of skin-like material that usually rots. It's not preserved in the fossil record. But in the 1990s, we found some of the best preserved dinosaur remains, and we realized a lot of sauropodian and ceratopian dinosaurs had that feature. BBC came out with their special, Walking with Dinosaurs. And they were trumpeting how proud they were to have the most anatomically correct depiction of dinosaur anatomy in world history, according to them. Well, I would beg to differ. I think that these ancient Incas, by eyewitness knowledge, had a better representation many centuries ago, because they knew something we didn't know. They didn't have just dead bones and fossils to look at. They had the real thing. Apparently, this type of dinosaur could be domesticated like an elephant as a beast of burden. Not all of them apparently were domesticatable, though. This guy's kind of having a bad day. He's about to get his leg bit off here.